Donald Trump's tariffs are the dumbest economic decision we have ever seen a president make in American history. I know it. You know it. Democrats in Congress know it. Even Republicans in Congress are starting to wake up to it and trying to hold Donald Trump accountable. It seems like the only person who didn't know these tariffs would be such a disaster was Donald Trump. But we are starting to see that he understands that the backlash is coming and he is screwing himself. Now, he probably won't change his mind because he is incapable of admitting a mistake, but he is certainly running away from the accountability that's coming to him, quite literally, because he ran away from the press when he was asked about crashing the economy, crashing the stock market, and how terrible his tariffs are, and a clip that we're going to check out. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we get into Donald Trump's short press conference that he literally ran away from, I want to hear from Senator Tim Kaine, who's been leading the charge on stopping these tariffs and explaining why they're so stupid.
This is a bill that is fundamentally about tariffs. I acknowledge what my colleague said, that there are issues at the northern border, and I have colleagues who have shared that, and there's mechanisms for working out those issues. And I would ask my colleagues, if you're concerned about any issue on the northern border, do you think we will more likely to be able to deal with it if we work hand in hand with Canada, or do you think the path to success is punitive actions against Canada? I would argue plainly that the right way to deal with any issue at the border with Canada is to work with Canada, not wage a trade war against them. This vote, though, is fundamentally about tariffs. The president's imposition of tariffs against Canada that will be a costly tax increase on American families. If the president has concerns about trade issues with Canada, guess what? This president negotiated a signature trade deal, the USMCA, that got 89 bipartisan votes in this chamber, and he has a negotiating process to find a resolution to any issue he cares about. The imposition of tariffs does nothing more than put a tax on American families. What I'd like to do, I did speak earlier today, but what I'd like to do is just read quickly from many stakeholders who have weighed in support of Senate Joint Resolution 37. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, quote, "Tariffs are taxes paid by Americans, and they will quickly increase prices at a time when many are struggling with the cost of living. That's why it's appropriate for Congress to exercise its authority under EPA and pass Senate Joint Resolution 37.
Presidents have previously had the power to levy tariffs when there is a national security threat that is necessitating them, right? And Donald Trump has claimed that that is fentanyl coming over the border from Canada, which isn't happening. But even if it was, how would this be the solution? Donald Trump, as we know, has not offered up an explanation for that, except for the fact that he likes the word tariff. And his national security concern for the rest of the world, getting these tariffs put on them, I don't know. The real national security concern is that our adversaries are now making friends with our allies as they scramble to find new trading partners. They're turning to China. That is a real threat created by Donald Trump. So not only are we seeing the threat abroad, but at home as our economy crashes. And Donald Trump was asked about that in two clips. In the second one, he ran away. But the first one, let's see his response.
The markets today are way down, the worst day in years because of the tariffs. So how's it going?
I think it's going very well. It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal? They've taken advantage of us for many, many years. For many years, we've been at the wrong side of the ball, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be unbelievable.
Like when a patient gets operated on? Do you mean just like repeatedly stabbing someone? This is insane. This is not an operation. This is much like Doge. There is no precision. There is no forethought. There is no planning. Donald Trump is just running roughshod with our economy and absolutely tanking it. And that is the reason why right after he wrapped up answering that question, which he didn't really answer, he just ran away.
The thing that people have to talk about We're up almost to $7 trillion of investment coming into our country. And you'll see how it's going to turn out. Our country's going to boom.
He took one question from Peter Doocy, so not a real journalist, even though Peter Doocy asked, the markets are crashing. Do you have any thoughts on this? And then he just had to scramble. Well, we've heard out of this Trump administration so much that they're so transparent, which isn't true. They just claim that they're transparent because they answer so many questions. But when you answer every question with a lie, that's not transparency. That's just blabbering and yapping. But Donald Trump, in this moment where people are most concerned about his economic agenda, refuses to do the thing that they claim they do the most, which is answer questions, because he is so terrified of the accountability that's coming. And it's not just coming from the press, it's coming from abroad, like we talked about. And Mark Carney responded to Donald Trump, the Prime Minister of Canada, in this clip right here.
The president's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs remain in place and will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. And while they have been imposed under different premises, some things are consistent. They are all unjustified, unwarranted, and in our judgment, misguided.
Donald Trump is ruining our relationships, both with trading partners and as just allies more broadly. It's why we see so many countries turning to the European Union, which isn't surprising, but also turning to China for their trading partnerships. That is terrifying. Donald Trump is creating national security threats just because he wants to act tough and saying, ooh, yeah, I'm the big man, I get to levy the tariffs. He is ridiculous. He's a child who does not understand what he's doing, which is why we need to see Congress step in. And many Republicans are starting to kind of cave on this as they realize it's not just detrimental to the country. They've never cared about that, but it's detrimental to their possible re-election. And one of our very favorite Democrats in Congress, Greg Kazar, was talking just about that on MSNBC in a clip I want to check out right here.
But what Donald Trump is doing is just a blanket set of tariffs on his tour to just try to feel like he's the most powerful person in the world and be able to be on phone calls with foreign leaders and feel like a big man. But we know that he doesn't actually care about American workers, because at the same time that he's putting these tariffs into effect, he's trying to give billionaires and big CEOs in America and across the world an enormous tax break. So what folks at home need to know is that Donald Trump promised you he was going to work to support the American worker and that he was going to work to lower prices. And Donald Trump lied through his teeth. He's been doing nothing to lower prices. Really, what he's spending his time doing is trying to be buddies with billionaires, the CEOs of enormous companies, and leave American workers out to dry while jacking up prices for the everyday consumer.
So, Congressman, is your main opposition the motives behind these policies, or is it the fact that, for example, in the case of China, which is one of the countries that, to use your terms, I mean, clearly has in the past and in many industries been dumping into the United States with very little repercussions, right? Any negative repercussions. They have the way the human rights violations that China carries out within its own people and the Uyghurs. I mean, it's just mind-boggling how the human rights are violated in China, and yet the products from China are welcome in the United States. So what is it? Is it a questioning of the motives behind the policy, or is it the flipping of the economic policy, the shift in economic policy that the vice president referred to it as?
Yeah, let me be clear here. There is a good way to impose tariffs. Just like President Biden said, for example, we are going to have tariffs on foreign steel while supporting the American steel industry. And you can do that in a smart and thoughtful way without putting tariffs on every single good, pushing them up to levels without really clear explanation about why you've even set it at that level, other than having Donald Trump's son go on the internet threaten foreign leaders and say, come deal with my dad, or maybe with other members of my family who you can cut a check to or cut a deal with. And so the policy and the motives are all tangled up here together, is what I think is really clear. We need to know is he is doing something outrageous and reckless and blanket and across the world while saying that his motive, just like it's always been, is come enrich me and my family and my donors, and maybe you'll get an exemption, or maybe you'll get some help. So this isn't to help the American worker. If it was, that's what the plan would clearly show. But what the plan is come cut a deal with Donald Trump, just like we saw, for example, with Mark Zuckerberg here this last week. The Biden administration was rightfully looking into Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's companies, for abusing American consumers, taking advantage of American small businesses. And now Zuckerberg goes and cuts Donald Trump a $25 million settlement check. Next thing you know, he's got invited to the White House. So Trump, on the one hand, is telling reporters at your network that he doesn't care whether prices go up for the American workers. He said he could care less. But what he does care about is what people that donated to his campaign think, people that could cut him a check personally think.
And so, Congressman, you being in the minority in the House, you being the minority in the Senate, and the White House being, Republican, what is it that you see you can do?
What we can do is speak out, build up the pressure, and get to the point where we just get 3 members of the Republican majority to stand up and do the right thing. Just this week, we heard that the Republicans are starting to get nervous about their plan to cut Medicaid in order to pay for billionaire tax cuts. We've got to amp up the pressure. Just now, we're hearing Donald Trump is starting to get nervous about Elon Musk continuing to slash so many federal jobs. We've got to amp up the pressure. The jobs report here that just came out for the month of March, we had the greatest number of announced layoffs last month in American history since the pandemic. The only other time we've had that number of layoffs announced was during the pandemic. And so the economic pain and the increased prices that Americans are feeling, Democrats in the minority need to be bold, speak out and say, we have a plan for actually lowering prices. And that means holding big corporations and big CEOs accountable for price gouging, not these reckless blanket tariff plans from Donald Trump that are not actually meant to bring jobs home.
We really do have more agency than ever in this moment. We can get Republicans to potentially bend the knee here. I really think that we can get them to cave to not our demands, but what is right, and put some limitations on Donald Trump's ability to just throw tariffs whenever and wherever he wants. So we need to use our voices. We need to step up. We need to call these people out. They're already terrified after what happened in Wisconsin. Let's put more pressure on them. Let's make it happen. I have a petition that you can sign below to demand that Congress hold Donald Trump accountable and stop these tariffs. We need to use our voices. It's what we're doing on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.